Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're taking a look back, really, at how one group was making sense of the world around April 2021.
Right. We've got the source material to YouTube video. The Council of Elders, April 23rd, 2021. That's the title.
Yeah, from the Christ is Back channel. And it's quite a snapshot of their views on global events right then.
It really is. And what's interesting, I think, is seeing how they connected the dots, between various news items, but through their own very specific lens.
Exactly. It helps us understand one way people interpret, well, everything happening around them by looking at their conversation from that specific time.
Mm-hmm. And the participants, you had Elder Kennedy hosting, Elder Johansson, who used to host, apparently.
Right, and Elders Kevin and Kelvin. It was Elder Kelvin's first time, actually.
Oh, yeah.
And she mentioned a book, The Return of Christ book, said it was on Amazon, link in the description, that sort of thing.
Ah, okay. So that book probably gives a lot of the framework for how they're seeing things.
Seems like it. It feels pretty central to how they interpret everything.
That makes sense. Their view of the news is definitely filtered through, a particular set of beliefs. Mentioning the book early on signals that.
So our mission today, basically, is to unpack what they were talking about, mainly this spike in volcanic activity and also rising global tensions.
And explore how they interpreted all that within their belief system.
Yeah. Let's jump into the volcanoes first. That seemed like a big focus.
It really was. They started with a number that sounded, well, pretty alarming at the time. 52 volcanoes erupting globally.
52, wow, that's quite a lot happening at once, geologically speaking.
Definitely. And they zeroed in on one in particular, La Soufriere on St. Vincent. That was the big one for them.
Yeah, the eruption there. And they mentioned the Prime Minister's statement, something about vaccinations.
Yeah, that only vaccinated people could evacuate. The elders, well, they clearly felt that was unfair, especially facing a natural disaster.
You can see why they'd say that. It raises difficult questions, doesn't it? About aid and, well, fairness in a crisis.
Absolutely. How resources get distributed and how politics can unfortunately intersect with these, natural events.
Then the conversation shifted to Iceland.
Ongoing activity there. They called the volcano the Icelandic Pokemon, sort of playfully, didn't give a specific name.
Okay. And they said it was getting worse daily.
Yeah, intensifying. And they tried to make it relatable, especially for UK listeners, by mentioning past eruptions that affected the UK, make it feel less distant.
That's a common technique, helps connect people to global events. Underscores that this stuff isn't just happening far away.
Exactly.
Okay, now this is where things got a little different. Yellowstone.
Ah, yes, Yellowstone. They talked about an earthquake, a 4.2 magnitude one. Happened about a day and a half before their recording, they said.
And the key point for them was that they claimed it wasn't reported by the USGS, the Geological Survey.
Right. Which led them to suspect maybe a cover-up, questioning the transparency of, the official channels.
Which, you sometimes see that during potential crises, right? People get distrustful of official sources, look elsewhere.
Definitely. And in this case, they mentioned a specific source they followed, Mary Greeley News. Said she'd been reporting on Yellowstone for years.
And what did she report, according to them?
That she had reported a 4.2 plus quake. And also, get this, signs of magma movement and incursion at Norris Lake Junction.
Norris Lake Junction. Why was that significant?
Well, the elders brought up that the last major Yellowstone eruption is believed to have started right there near Norris Junction.
Ah, so linking current activity to the origin point of the last massive eruption, you can see why that would raise alarms for them, thinking about a potential big one.
Exactly. It creates this heightened sense of risk in their interpretation.
And to really drive home the power involved, they shared this fun fact about volcanoes.
Oh, yeah, the underwater one.
That's the one. The biggest recorded explosion, apparently. Trapped salt water causing this massive blast, like 200,000 tons of TNT.
Wow. That's huge.
Heard 2,000 miles away, shockwaves circled the globe 7 times. They tied that immense power back to the visuals from St. Vincent, just to give a sense of scale.
It certainly does. Puts the destructive potential in perspective.
So with all this volcanic activity as the backdrop, they then moved on to interpret it all, well, scripturally.
Right. This is key to their whole discussion. They're actively trying to find meaning, potential future signs within their religious texts.
They brought up Luke chapter 21, verse 11, talks about great earthquakes, famines, pestilences, terrors, and great signs from heaven.
Standard passage is often used in these kinds of discussions about end times or eschatology.
And Acts chapter 2, verse 19 too, Wonders in the heavens above and signs on the earth below, blood and fire and vapor of smoke.
Fire and smoke. Easy to connect that to volcanoes visually.
Very easy. Then they got really specific with Joel chapter 2, verse 31. The sun shall be turned to darkness and the moon to blood before the coming of the great and awesome day of the Lord.
Ah, the blood moon prophecy.
Exactly. And there was a lunar eclipse, a quote-unquote blood moon, coming up on May 26th, 2021.
So they wondered if that was the blood moon, the one from the prophecy.
Yeah. Could this be it? And they noted it was the last one that year, which seemed to add weight for them. Timing is everything in these interpretations, isn't it?
It often seems to be.
Yeah.
Seeing patterns, connections between earthly events like eruptions and celestial ones like an eclipse,
Yeah.
it can feel very meaningful if you're looking through that prophetic lens.
Then they talked about people hiding in caves, in rocks,
How did they interpret that?
as a reaction to, future catastrophes, maybe nuclear war, maybe an asteroid impact, big stuff.
Right. That kind of imagery, seeking shelter from massive upheaval, it appears in lots of places.
They even mentioned the idea of elites having underground bunkers, that familiar anxiety about, who gets saved in a disaster. And then they introduced this concept, nemesis.
Nemesis, what's that?
Well, they didn't fully define it, but suggested it's some kind of celestial body, maybe hidden. And its activity could be causing the tectonic plates to move, magma shifts,
Okay.
even causing the Earth to, quote, wobble like a drunkard, maybe messing with the moon's orbit.
Wow. That's definitely moving into unconventional territory.
Yeah.
Nemesis isn't exactly mainstream science.
No, it's more of a fringe theory. But it was part of their interpretation, suggesting this cosmic influence on geology.
Interesting. Ideas about hitter planets or stars affecting Earth do pop up in speculative circles sometimes.
So after the volcanoes and prophecies, they switched gears a bit. Moved towards geopolitics, escalating tensions.
Right. Speculation about World War III, basically. Based on news reports from around that time, April 2021.
Shows they were definitely watching the news, trying to fit current events into their bigger picture.
Absolutely. They talk about Ukraine, Russia warning about painful consequences if troops cross borders.
I remember that period. Very tense. They mention reports of Putin's robot army near the border.
Yeah, that phrase was used. And Ukraine apparently seeking help from Turkey. These were real news items, causing real concern.
Definitely. And again, they connected it back to Scripture. Matthew 24, verses 6 and 7.
Let me guess. Wars and rumors of wars.
You got it. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation, famines, earthquakes, the whole package.
Classic passage for seeing conflicts as signs. It's that pattern again. Interpreting current events through Scripture.
Now, there was also some political commentary mixed in here. This is just reporting what they said, of course.
Okay. What was the angle?
The opinion voiced was that things might have been different with Trump still in office. That the current President Biden was perceived by them as weaker, maybe emboldening adversaries.
Ah, okay. So a specific political take on how leadership affects global stability. That adds another layer to their analysis.
They even brought up Nostradamus.
Really? Nostradamus, too.
Yep. Referenced a prophecy about a fool and the harlot, supposedly bringing about World War III.
So biblical prophecy and Nostradamus, drawing from different sources believed to predict the future.
Seems like it. Then the talk turned to military readiness, commands prepping for potential nuclear war,
Heavy stuff.
and also internal divisions. They mentioned a civil war dynamic in the U.S., left versus right, so threats from outside and inside.
Paints a pretty grim picture. A world feeling unstable on multiple fronts. Risk, uncertainty.
Yeah. And they gamed out a scenario. What if Russia moved on Crimea and China moved on Taiwan simultaneously?
A two-front crisis.
Exactly. And their concern was, where would that leave Israel? Potentially vulnerable. They pointed to recent attacks back then on an Israeli ship, a nuclear facility, as maybe precursors, and argued it's basically impossible to fight effectively on multiple major fronts at once.
That's a standard strategic concern for sure. Spreading forces too thin.
They mentioned numbers too, roughly 150,000 Russian troops near Crimea, Chinese naval activity building up,
Highlighting the scale of the military postures.
and kept coming back to Israel's potential vulnerability, suggesting a big conflict elsewhere could leave it wide open for Iran, in their view.
So focusing on the regional power dynamics and how a global crisis could shift them.
They even mention a potential threat to the UK bombings, maybe, because of its global role, its alliances.
A wider net of potential consequences.
Yeah, they referenced examples like leaders in Australia or New Zealand supposedly being warned about ties with China and Russia, suggesting pressure on allied nations.
Expands the conflict beyond just direct military action. Includes influence, maybe other kinds of attacks.
Then this interesting idea, balanced destruction.
What's that?
The thought that in a huge war, the opposing sides might just weaken each other so much that the whole point becomes questionable. Like, the destruction is so vast, what's even won?
A sobering thought on the ultimate cost of modern warfare. Pyrrhic victories may be worse.
And they emphasized China's military size, just the sheer numbers compared to others, the potential imbalance.
Highlighting that asymmetry in potential conflicts.
Then another specific prophecy reference from an unnamed source, apparently, something about under the world ships will be south.
Shifts will be south.
Yeah, connecting it somehow to the Russia-Ukraine situation and, strangely, the Jewish Shabbat observance. Very specific, very interpretive.
Definitely illustrates how intricate these interpretations can get, linking geopolitics, geography, religious practice.
They also clarified something, the great day of the Lord, not just one day, they said.
Oh, like a period.
Yeah, an extended period of escalating events leading up to Armageddon. But they also said things described as happening in a day or an hour in prophecy mean they'll happen fast when they do start.
So a process, but potentially a very rapid one once it kicks off.
Then back to weapons. Russia's nukes. They specifically mentioned the Satan missile.
The RS-28 Sarmat, yeah.
Wow.
Very powerful.
They stressed how much more destructive it is than older weapons. Fewer needed to cause massive damage, even to a country like the UK.
A stark reminder of modern nuclear capabilities.
They confirmed, UK and France have nukes in NATO. Israel too, though locations unknown, just stating the nuclear facts of life.
Right. Sets the stage for the potential stakes involved.
Then some more specific visions they had heard about concerning Israel, like the IDF, the Israeli army being potentially wiped out.
Wow, that's a strong claim.
And also reports of younger people. They mentioned Gen Alpha, Gen Z having visions. Visions of World War III, but also angelic intervention. A collection, they called it.
So incorporating contemporary, personal, prophetic experiences into the mix. Divine involvement in future events.
Yeah. And lastly, on this topic, they brought up 1 Thessalonians 5.2. The Lord coming like a thief in the night.
Common passage, how do they read it?
Literally, as a clue that the return would actually happen at night.
Interesting. Taking the metaphor very literally there to pinpoint a specific detail.
Okay, so that covers the tensions. Then the conversation shifted again. To the nature of Christ's return, angels and CM. This is where modern tech comes in.
Right. Trying to bridge ancient prophecy with today's world. That's a major theme for them.
They tackled Revelation 1.7. Christ returning on a cloud, every eye will see him.
How do they explain that? Seems impossible, literally.
Their interpretation, the cloud is the internet, the cloud system.
Ah, okay. Metaphorical.
Yeah. They argued the internet is the only way every eye could actually see it happen globally, not a simultaneous physical sighting.
That's creative. A way to make the ancient language fit modern reality. Symbolic interpretation.
And social media, they said, fits with gathering people from all corners of the earth, the most efficient way to connect everyone. They seem surprised anyone would mock this idea.
Shows how convinced they were. Seeing modern tools as direct fulfillments of prophecy.
They did acknowledge the difficulty, though, interpreting ancient visions, saying figures like John on Patmos had to use the language of his time for things he couldn't possibly understand.
Like describing future tech.
Exactly. Which can lead to confusion if we take descriptions too literally today. That's a fair point about historical context.
It is. The linguistic and conceptual gap is huge.
This led them to Ezekiel's wheel. Ezekiel 1, that vision of the wheel within a wheel and the creatures.
What do they make of that?
They interpreted it as, well, a UFO, an unidentified flying object.
Okay. Aligning biblical visions with modern aerial phenomena.
Yeah, and they linked other things too, like millstone imagery to circular UFOs, the pillar of fire in the desert to maybe cigar-shaped craft, or the visual of ships descending.
So a consistent interpretation.
Yeah.
Biblical descriptions matching modern UFO reports.
Yeah.
But with a twist, right?
Right. Their viewpoint wasn't extraterrestrials. It was angelic ships.
Angelic ships, the Lord's fleet, they
Yeah,
called it.
exactly. Used throughout history for divine purposes. They noted some religious folks resist the idea of physical, non-earthly beings, prefer other dimensions, maybe.
So a theological explanation for UFOs, integrating it into their belief system. Divine, not alien.
They used Jesus's words coming from up there versus people being from down here as support, and explained angelic as more of a title, a role in God's service. Fleet members, guardian angels, different functions.
Defining the celestial hierarchy within their framework.
And they broadened out, suggested there's likely abundant life out there. Humans aren't the only intelligent creation. Lots of different species, maybe.
Challenging the anthropocentric view.
And the purpose of this fleet, these angelic ships, right now, they're waiting for the right time to collect the chosen, the elite believers.
Okay, so these interpreted ships have a specific future role in gathering believers.
Yeah. They connected this to the parable of the wheat and the tares, Matthew 13.
The separation at harvest time.
That's the one. Believers, the wheat, are gathered. Non-believers, the tares, are removed and, well, burned. They mentioned other parables too, the vineyard, the wise and foolish virgins with their lamps.
All emphasizing readiness, judgment, separation. Common themes in these discussions.
And they stress that understanding all this, these prophecies, is a gift for those with a heart of noble mind and noble heart.
Implying it requires a certain spiritual receptiveness. Not everyone will get it.
They saw the reported desperation in Israel, even mentioning alleged faking of a Messiah figure as proof of this deep longing for the real Messiah.
Interpreting current events in Israel through that lens of messianic expectation.
And they looked back, recalling the historical rejection of Jesus, blamed it on self-interest, personal gain over truth. They also brought up that Rabbi Kaduri prophecy, the one about revealing the Messiah's name as Yeshua or Yahushua after his death.
Yes, I've heard of that interpretation.
Uh,
Connecting a modern rabbi back to Jesus.
Right. And they mentioned his supposed reluctance to reveal it earlier, fearing opposition, linking past rejection to potential future recognition.
Drawing that line through history.
And finally, they suggested Israel's current challenges, the potential for future invasion they foresee, is linked to that historical rejection, a consequence in their theological view.
Framing current difficulties within that narrative of historical cause and effect, theologically speaking.
So as that particular Council of Elders discussion wrapped up back in April 21, they actually mentioned what was next on their agenda.
Oh, was it?
COVID-19, lockdowns, vaccines, that was going to be their next topic, which of course was huge then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Shows what was top of mind for them and likely their community during that period.
They finished by thanking the panel, the audience, and with a blessing. Standard closing.
Makes sense.
So when you step back and think about all this, these interpretations we've explored, trying to understand ancient prophecies through modern tech, current events, it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
How does it shift your own view?
Exactly. How might it shift your perception of the world? And what responsibility maybe comes with trying to interpret things this way, or even with dismissing it? Definitely gives you something to think about.
It certainly does.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive.